The recording started, we're starting okay, and we're gonna start right with one of the most important things, the nursing update.
First, I don't have much. I did get my new shipment of cart seats through the state grant. I think I got 53 counted. They were really, I put in like a $15,000 order and the lady came back to like, no, 7,500. So I had to scale back what I ordered, but I've already given out 5. So yeah, I have so many different organizations. I'm making contact with them. They're like, keep finding out about my car seat program. I did apply for the Buckle Up for Life grant again, after having gone to the Palooza. So we'll see if I get that one. All those car seats are gone. Yeah, that was the big thing. Now it's finding room to get the shipment in because there's no room at the office.
Do you also in that process have the boosters? Oh God, my neck is killing me. Boosters or the transition from a car seat to the older?
Yeah, so I have combination seats, which are, they're 3-in-1. So it's the 5-point harness turns into a high back booster with a seatbelt, and then no back booster with a seatbelt. Yeah.
Right.
So I only ordered 5 infant carriers, and those are gone. I should have ordered like 20 of them. Because Bay State called me. They have a mom who had a baby early and has no car seat, I think, new to the country. So hopefully that will work out. She can find one. So yeah,
Terrific.
I'm amazed. What else? Starting to work on the flu clinic season for this coming fall. I've started reaching out to the schools. I'm going to get them on the calendar first and then fill in with all the other community organizations. That's all that I have.
Birds.
The birds.
The birds. Somebody's background, that's great. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for?
Madam Chair, it's Jim. Just a quick point of order. Did we approve the minutes yet?
No, they weren't on the agenda. Oh, there
Oh,
they
they
are. No,
weren't.
you're right.
Okay.
No, they are. They are. I beg your pardon. We'll go back to that. Thank you, Jim. Anything else on the nursing? Any questions? All right, let's go back to the minutes of April 14th. Were distributed. I think they were very good. Any comments? If not, a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from April 14th, 2023.
Second, someone?
I wasn't here.
Right there.
I
Okay.
was second.
Okay, thank you. Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the 14th of April. Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all.
And Pat, if you don't, if you don't mind, is there any way we can do a quick set of introductions? There are new faces in person, and we also have Ileana from DPH for those that don't know each other real quick, if you don't mind.
No, of course. Thank you. I'm used to having you at my left and
I'm usually there, but town meeting killed me last night.
right. No, thank you. Let's go ahead from my left.
Jill Sweet, public health nurse.
Stephen Browning, Health Inspector, Great Barrington.
Diane Romeo, Lennox Board of Health.
Pat Levine, Sheffield Board of Health.
Jordan Creation, New Marlboro Board of Health.
Harry Gould, Otis Board of Health. Which one? Otis. Great, thanks, Harry.
Jane Smith, Alford Board of Health, and also Southern Berkshire Public Health Collaborative.
And on the call?
Jim, Tri-Town.
Mount Washington. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Jim Willis, Tri-Town and Town of Lee rep.
And then also on there.
Allie Lovejoy, Mount Washington.
Great.
Scott McCall, Town of New Marlboro. I'm here.
Thank you, Scott.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ileana. I work for Office of Local and Regional Health. I'm the program coordinator. It's really great to see you all.
Thank you for coming again. Okay, thanks for that reminder, Jim. We have next on the agenda, old business, which is actually the majority of our business today. You will find in your packets a very impressive, large document Thank God it's large, because in the original form it was almost unreadable. So this is wonderful. I don't know that you all had a chance to look at it, but I will say that I have, and I want to give you my very positive endorsement of the work that's gone into it and the thought and the direction that our leadership is taking us in terms of the application of the funding that we're going to see coming in. Jane, do you want, or Jim, to speak to this document more fully?
Well, Jane
ahead,
can talk about the work plan. I guess the first thing I'll do is, since we have Ileana here, with the caveat being that we have not submitted a work plan to the state or a budget, but I will formally announce that through the capacity phase 1 through 3 process, I'm pleased to announce that DPH has awarded us an additional $215,000 to kind of catch up where our deficits were, with a bottom line total of 515,000, which 300 is our base amount, and they're going to give us an additional 215,000, hopefully effective July 1, contingent upon final work plan and a budget. While I don't have a budget prepared yet, I am, carving out what this would look like. And, we need to meet the priorities of what the CART assessment is. And hopefully I have agreement that obviously the multiple priorities is Jane is effective July 1 will be at 40 hours for she's full-time now, but only at 30, but she needs to be full-time. We're looking at a full-time shared inspector with benefits with a competitive salary. One thing we're thinking about is adding like a 0.2 FTE for like a per diem inspector to assist the full-time inspector. I don't think we can afford 2 full-time inspectors with the benefits. 215,000 sounds like a lot. When we start carving out fringe and travel and all the parts that go with that, we won't be able to afford that. So 1 full-time inspector. We're hoping to maybe set up this like a per diem system as like backup inspectors, where we could possibly tap into existing expertise. Like, for example, Jordan gets trained as a food inspector. If he needs to do some food inspection work in other towns, we could probably figure out a mechanism for pay on that. Obviously, Jill's full-time. We do have a per diem backup nurse budgeted. And the other thing we've been really thinking about is possibly hiring a bilingual community health worker for a lot of reasons. The budget can't handle it to be full-time with benefits, but I would like to see like if we could possibly figure out a way to complement the other funding piece for the CHW, and possibly maybe using some of the vaccine revenue, which we can wait to another meeting to deal with that. But I think, a bilingual community health worker plays a variety of roles. We need assistance with bilingual assistance, Spanish speaking, at clinics, and public health documents and things that we're doing. Sometimes Jill needs assistance with the car seat program. I would envision a community health worker to do some administrative work, to take some of the smaller burdens off Jane so she can work on high level things for the collaborative, assisting with flu clinics. Obviously, we need bilingual support there. And I think like in some of the outreach and things that we're doing, because Jane can't be in 12 towns at the same time. And I feel that there's value in with DBH support, assuming they will down the road allow us to hire a CHW on top of the inspector. And I think if we can figure that out, I think we're on the road of a really comprehensive collaborative. While I don't have a budget, I'll turn the work plan over to Jane. That's sort of, and we're also going to fund additional dollars, Madam Chair, of trying to get some of the towns into online permitting. I don't think we'll afford to be able to do all towns the first year, but if we can grab a couple towns, kind of get them up and running, and the next fiscal year get another couple towns up and running. We already have half the collaborative on some type of online permitting system. some towns don't have it, like, we know that Sandusfield doesn't have it, we know that Mount Washington doesn't have it. And I know Sheffield, we're trying to get you your own standalone system, so I think, with travel, benefits and everything, and I still need to figure out the benefits package. Those are my high level thoughts, but I'm very, blessed and pleased that we're getting something more than what we're currently getting. I was praying for 200 and we got 215.
I think that speaks well to the work that you and Jane have done and others in terms, as well as this board working collaboratively together, trying to understand our needs and assessing them across the towns, et cetera. So we have a plan. Jane?
So, a lot of the grants now are using the SMART objectives. And it's like, couldn't tell you what that stood for, except it's like achievable, it's trackable, and so you make a goal. And so we have 5 goals in this work plan, and you'll see that at the top of the sheet here, it will say project goal. So each one has kind of its own spin. So the 5 project goals are increase the proposed shared services arrangements capacity to strengthen advanced effectiveness and efficiency. Actually, there's additional that needs to come down. That's the overall project goal. I'm sorry. There's 5 objectives. So the first SMARTY objective is to recruit, hire, and train shared inspector staff to expand our ability to meet more standards in community sanitation, housing, and food protection. So this is directly addressing some of the shortfalls that we did see in our region for a variety of things, right? And so this is where our needs assessment comes in. So like town A might be really good on septic, but needs support in housing, for instance, and needs some mentorship in food. So what the community assessment is really going to do for us is to find out what the towns feel that they need, kind of as a baseline for getting this person up and started. That's the shared inspector working along the sides of myself and others, other supports within the collaborative. So for that, so what we're gonna do is I need feedback on how we're gonna achieve that objective. So the activities that are listed in the specific activities to meet that objective, see how we're getting more granular is, to do a community needs assessment so that we know what it is that the towns want. 1.2, now this is the first page. Also some towns might have additional capacity to that they can share. So some towns might not want, might be very happy to share like someone from the next town over. So we also want to find out where there's excess capacity in the towns. Hire and train 1 full-time inspector and hire part-time inspectors that can help with those needs in those inspectional and administrative needs. And then the 1.4 is roll out inspectional services to meet the inspectional and administrative needs of the towns and the public health excellence group. So you see how we went from really broad and we just keep getting more. And then the actual activities are the actual things that we're proposing to do in fiscal year 24 to meet the objective. So I don't know the best way to go about this. There's 4 objectives that we need to go over. Should I just state should we look at the objectives and then come back, or do we just want to look at each one?
Well, I think the way you just did the first objective is good.
Okay.
And just
So,
do a high level for each one.
all right, do we want to talk about one
Yeah,
now?
if anybody has, I think I know I was confused and you were able to allay that confusion. How one inspector is going to help across multiple disciplines.
Mhm.
Do you want to speak to that?
So, let me just put speaker view. Just need to unpin. So we have capacity in South County. We have actually talented people in different areas. And so we're gonna be putting out, you know, an advertisement to hire an inspector, and that inspector is gonna come with strengths. So if they come from the food industry, for instance, a natural thing would be for them to start with food, right? Get them trained up, have them do some of the lower level stuff as they build up their skills, and that frees up other inspectors to do other things, if that makes sense. So, and we haven't actually talked to the town, so we don't know who would be doing this work, except that our hope is that, like, for instance, and if someone comes with high food and capacity, and there's someone else that can then just do septic, or someone wants it, or, you know, is really strong on housing, they're no longer having to, you know, inspect the Dollar General, and so that's gonna free up capacity. And so it really, I think, there's a chance for us to really become a shared service agreement.
Right, and it's going to really depend on our towns agreeing and our inspectors agreeing to cross the border, so to
Right.
speak. Which we have to mount a good argument for that, in the capacity building, that it will allow.
I
And then
think,
there's also, oh, go ahead, Jim.
oh, no, go ahead, Jane, go ahead.
Oh, and then there's also, if I can remember what I was about to say. I can't remember. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, Tri-Town has we have a skill set on how we share services equally with our towns within Tri-Town. And the number one priority is to advertise and get a full-time inspector first. Then we're gonna have to figure out how that's gonna work. But I will tell you, for example, Tri-Town's pretty well staffed. You know, a couple of the other small towns are currently fine. There's a handful of towns that really need assistance, right? Sheffield needs some help, Sandusfield really needs some help, and maybe a couple others. And so, that's really good to get up and running, right? And you put a lot of resources into getting the baseline up and running. And as time goes out, my vision would be things will start to settle out. You know, the permanized system gets up and running in Sandusfield and Sheffield. We have a health agent doing the food, and then and at the same time, we can start to figure out what are the other needs and whatnot. And once things start to balance themselves out, it'll be interesting because, like, I have four soil evaluators, for example, for Tri-Town. I just can't send them to Otis because they're funded through Tri-Town. But if I have someone that needs to train Heather, for example, Terry, I can send a soil evaluator up to train Heather and then backfill the inspector to do a little bit of food service. And that's how I would envision this all working out. Plus, Jane and myself, more likelier than not, are going to be out in the field while we're already doing our full-time jobs, training people. We're not just going to send these people out on an island and figure out what's going on in these towns. And so there's going to be a walk for a crawl, then walk, then run kind of mentality. So we can start to figure out. One town may say, we're good to go. We don't need you in our town. And that's fine. But, but it's always good to have a backup. And, one inspector with a competitive salary is not cheap. We want to get qualified people or find someone that can get the qualifications, because we still need to strategically align ourselves to meet the special commission of local regional health. And then if the SAFE 2.0 gets passed with all the new minimum standards that everyone's going to have to meet, we don't want to be behind an 8 ball having someone that doesn't qualify for like an RS or something down the road. So we got to start thinking further down the road. But I think what we've accomplished with these 12 towns, we're gonna make it work. And I think we shouldn't get too worried about how it's all going to function down the road. We just need to figure out how to get things up and running, and then we can continue to figure this out.
Well, I think that means our term, our name with the word collaborative in it is exactly correct. I mean, we're going to have to collaborate for the benefit of the whole
Yeah, and there'll also be a lot of trainings being offered. I'm not entirely sure how the hub's gonna work out yet. I know that there might be capacity for there to be mentoring from the hub, and if it doesn't work out the way that I think the state would like for it to, that we do have experienced inspectors in our collaborative, and so we'll just make it work.
So the inspectors that are in the collaborative from one town to another would share their services with each other in other towns?
Maybe.
Possibly,
While
yeah.
you would get another full-time person that would kind of float in between to fill the gaps in every town. They would, they might be doing food in this town, but they need to do soil in that town. So you're trying to look for somebody who's kind of got the whole umbrella.
We're probably not gonna find someone with the whole umbrella. We're probably gonna find someone with one strength.
Okay,
Like if they come with us for septic system,
Right.
And a soil evaluator, for
Yeah.
instance, then that's a huge relief. And it
Right.
takes off it takes off pressure
Right.
off of that, and then we can start training, like,
you could take your individual local people can train for something additional so that you've got a little bit of help while they're crazy busy, which we are probably right now at this time of year in all the towns with septics, right?
yeah. And that's where it really comes back down to that community assessment, which I know I've been talking about it. But it's, I have a few things that need to happen, in May, and then so probably starting in July, we'll be sitting down with the different towns, and like Sheffield, for instance, really wants, like, Council on Aging, the Select Board would like to talk about it, but obviously the Board of Health. And then maybe even have another venue and really see what it is that the towns, want for themselves, where they feel that they need assistance. Because we're not gonna force we're gonna be a framework for supporting the towns and meeting them in the areas that they need assistance, but then we do have some data, right? We
Yeah.
have some reference point on the things that maybe we could do better. I think also, like, I can see my role being, so like, for instance, when a complaint comes in, you're supposed to have a specific book and write it down a specific way and have follow-up in a certain amount. And so that's something, for instance, I could see my role being is to help the towns have the book, right? That's
Right.
gonna work for
Right.
them, and help do some trainings either internally or externally to talk about, like, okay, when you get a complaint, here's how it needs to be handled. And that documentation piece is something that I think, probably many shared services arrangements didn't do particularly well, including us.
Right. And if we uniform them, everybody, then you can go from time to time and be able to open the book, what each town needs, because it all looks the same.
Well, if that's what the town wants, yes, they'd at least get training on it.
Seems like a good idea.
Yeah, and Terry, there's always gonna be autonomy, with the towns can still do their own thing, but the goal is to try to meet the minimum standards in public health, because we're now
Yeah.
getting the funding, like some, Otis and Monterey are on online permitting.
Yeah.
There's larger towns that aren't, so like it's all over the place, but we can figure out a way to support each other. And like long term, I would love to see a mechanism where everyone's kind of sharing and think we're just making it happen. I think step one is let's get the shared inspector, figure out what the needs for the town, and kind of get those that are at baseline, try to start working them towards where they are with the other towns. It's really exciting stuff.
Let me just, hi, everybody. I just want to interject something here. Something that we're starting to see across some of the other groups is that they are now for the first time appointing one another's health inspectors to be their agents. So I don't know Jim, how many health inspectors are there as a total between all of the towns in your massive group?
Oh, man. Well, I have four staff at Tri-Town, Otis and Monterey got a 0.5. I think there's 2 in Great Barrington. Yeah, but the problem is that no one's really full-time or part-time. Some get stipends.
No, that's okay. What we're suggesting, and this actually came, let me just get rid of this one. Okay, sorry, my phone always rings when I'm speaking. What Cheryl actually came out with the other day in one of the meetings that we were in was a suggestion that that you bring in that you get a list of all of your inspectors and you put that list in front of each of your next boards of health meetings and ask for a motion to appoint those names. You don't have to have them come in personally, but appoint them as agents of your Board of Health within your group. And that way, if you do need to like reach out to, if Monterey has something come up and needs to reach out to you, Jim, saying, we need somebody today, we have something going on. It's done. It's a done deal. It's in place. I don't know if that's something that would be acceptable to you all, but some of the groups are starting to do that now, just in case.
Yeah, I think that's, we're definitely we'll want to have that conversation.
Right, and
figure that out.
the other reason to do that is that when you make a hire of a new inspector, you're going to want that new inspector to go from town to town to town to town, working with the existing staff, shadowing them at first. But that way everybody's covered by everything, and that way you're all covered. It's I think Rich Mucci would chime in if he was on here with us right now and say that covers you in many ways, and under any kind of liability issues that you may have if they're already an agent of your board.
Yeah, we've done that on an individual basis with an inspector, and I think the idea of doing it, if the towns are willing, in a more wholesale fashion is very interesting.
Okay.
Well, and also also I'm sensitive to this because my name is Jane Smith, right? I have gone into a Beckett and been like, hi, I'm Jane Smith. I'm here to do an inspection. And it didn't go over so well, right?
Well, especially if you went in with some guy named John Smith together.
Yeah, John, and leave John at home.
Right?
So, that if we did do something, if we decided to do something like that, then we could support it with badges and
Right,
like
a credentialing, a
A
card.
letter of introduction.
Yeah,
whatever.
something like that. Mhm.
Yeah.
Just so that people know.
Right.
So,
Okay, I think we should move on to number 2.
all right, so number 2 is talks about expand staffing to support the public health nursing program with primary focus on work with the special community projects with an equity lens. So this is where expanding the shared services coordinator to include management of the public health excellence grant and the supervising training of shared inspector and community health worker.
That's you.
That's me.
Right.
And so that would bring my position, not just a coordinator, but a little bit more of a manager type of a role. The second thing is to hire a community health worker. And it says it's partially funded by the Public Health Excellence Grant. I don't think that the $515,000 that we have can make up for the all of the fringe benefits, but we have other money coming in. And so for the purposes of this, we're saying we want a community health worker. This will help partially pay for that person. And then we will try to backfill, hopefully, and be able to make it full time. Jim he's not here, but I think he would agree with me.
Get more coffee, I think.
Yeah. And then the 2.3 is roll out additional public health nursing services to public health excellence towns. And that's also going to be informed by the community needs assessment that we're going to be doing. Thank you, Ellie. All right, so that's the Smarty objective number 2. I think there might be a little redundancy with 5, and so I might clean that up. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Jane, one of the things I thought about the CHW role is, the collaborative has been asking us to really expand on the homebound vaccination program that Jill currently does. And so Jill's the only full-time nurse now, but we're gonna have a backfill nurse as needed. If she's on vacation, she's sick or whatever. But we don't want to be sending our public health nurse into the woods at a house, not knowing the environment there. And the CHW would assist Jill in doing that homebound program. So I think that's another example why we're thinking more CHW position.
No, that's a good point. And I will attest to Jill. We have she's gone into some pretty hairy situations, and we want to protect our our favorite public health nurse.
Thank you. Good.
Any comments on Smarty objective number 2? And you will see also that it has, the activity description, but it also talks about how we're gonna bring equity into it, right? So like, for instance, if you see on 2.2, it says priority candidates or applicants, that's what that should say, who are Spanish speaking, right? That's one way. And if, that we will incorporate equity, because we want to be trying to think about that at every step. And then the other thing is like, for 2.3, the equity focus is launch programs identified as high priority need in the community's needs assessment. So like, part of what that will be is seeing if there's underserved populations. For some towns, it might be youth, and some other towns, it might be seniors, and other towns, it might be, and so on and so forth. So then we have objective number 3. This really is focusing on to the documentation. So objective number 1 was to like build the inspectional needs. Objective number 3 is really trying to figure out how to get that documentation better so that we're meeting the state requirements. So obviously in 3.1, the first thing we're gonna have to do is kind of like work with the towns to see, okay, what is it that you're doing now, right? And I would anticipate when we do that, that we'll actually find some really great practices that we can share with the rest of the group. So we're gonna evaluate the towns, see where areas that they need improvement, and I'm gonna put areas of strength and improvement.
Don't we also have information from the fact that towns had to submit documents as examples and they were then analyzed by a third party working for the state? Is that information accessible to us that would maybe jumpstart this so we know?
So Ileana and Mike, do you know if that will be made on a town to town basis? I know that that information is available as a collaborative, and we would get a percentage of towns that are meeting certain things. So yes, I think that could inform it.
Okay.
I don't know for town to town.
I think you're gonna see it in the form of your collaborative. And
Okay.
the reason for that is twofold. And Ileana can speak to this, but DPH looks at this as a shared services collaborative, not as a bunch of different towns. And the integrity of the program, I think, depends on it staying that way. And then there's the other issue that I believe I've discussed with you all previously, which is that by disaggregating by town and attributing this need to one town over another opens you up to all kinds of criticism from taxpayers or from people within your government saying you're not doing a good enough job. Why did you fall short there? Because this is a capacity assessment, and we all know that, but others will look at it as a performance assessment, and that's when you can get into some unwanted issues with people.
Thank you, Mike.
So maybe to that point, maybe we could just look at the CART assessment and just work off of that, and then say, here's an area that we identified through the CART assessment that needs improvement. Here's some tools, here's some best practices, and then we could provide individual support as needed.
Right.
That's the best way to go. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
And Jane and Pat, we get these towns into the updated permitized system. It's all going to settle itself out.
Yeah.
Because everything's going to be standardized, and like I think complaints aren't in permitized, but like we just have to figure that out. But I think the goal is to try to, the food inspections are updated and permitized, and it's standardized. Like you can't complete a food inspection on the online system without actually completing it, versus like the hand paper, chicken scratch, misspelled words, and so to get more to the innovative way of documentation, that's part of what we're doing with this funding, is trying to get these towns up into the online permitting system.
Well, and on that 3.1, so we talked about the activity, right? So the equity focus is in our area, a lot of the equity is around from town to town, right? But then if you go all the activity measure of success, these are actually the things that we're going to say, here, DPH. Here's what we did and here's how we did it. So the activity measure of success is going to be where we're checking off the box, right? And so, so I said, review and feedback from all 12 SSA towns. That might need to be tweaked a little bit based on our conversation.
Yeah, it may not be all 12 need.
Right.
Okay.
So 3.2 is, provide forms and training to each public health excellence town in order to address areas in need of improvement identified in the initial assessment. And then the activity measure of success for that is that all of our towns have access to and use forms, equipment, and training to comply with the statutory requirements. And then 3.3 is implement permit I-2020 and a tablet-based inspection to public health excellent towns that would like to adopt. Not all towns might not. We don't know that because we haven't asked. And then the activity measure of success is we'd really like to try to get at least 2 towns to upgrade to online permitting program in fiscal year 24.
Do you think you have a typo?
What's that?
Under activity end date for 3.3, it should be 6/30/24.
Yes, thank you.
Ending correspondence.
Yeah, and also above it. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, on that one.
Do you have any thoughts on Smarty objective number 3? Okay. So one of the things that was identified in the CART assessment is that there are some towns that aren't in part of a tobacco collaborative. Some towns have a really good reason because they don't have a tobacco establishment. So we're not going to really address those towns, but there are some towns. So off the top of my head, Sheffield, New Marlborough, Sandusfield now has a tobacco. And so, and Jim tried to see if they could just add those towns on to their existing tobacco grant. And that's not quite what they're doing right now. And so what you'll see here is really on how to still support those towns and work towards it. Because it's not just having a tobacco inspector come in, it's also all the education, it's having the board understand what their role is and possibly looking at adopting regulations that reflect the state rules so that it gives them something to work with when there is an issue. Jim, do you want to talk about that?
Sure, yeah, so Tri-Town's been funded through our tobacco control program for 27 years. I think maybe we may be going into our last year of our contract or 1 or 2 years. There was some scuttlebutt this year that they were going to reopen the existing RFR to add unfunded towns. But what they essentially did, they kind of backtracked that and reopened the RFR only for new collaboratives, not for existing ones with new towns, which I thought was a missed opportunity, I thought. So our current tobacco grant only covers this certain towns, Otis, Great Barrington. For South County, we have Otis, Great Barrington, and I think Egremont, who's not part of our collaborative. Everything is then central and north and whatnot. But what we can do is, while we wait for the new tobacco RFR to open up year or 2 down the road, we can utilize our existing tobacco inspector with a little bit of this collaborative resources, get Sheffield kind of educated, get the towns that have tobacco stores at least educated. We can work with those towns to update their regulations or create new ones. Sheffield years ago used to be part of our tobacco collaborative, so their regulations are archaic. And a couple other, New Marlborough at one point was part of our collaborative. And then we can set ourselves up well, so when the next RFR opens up for tobacco, we add those towns and then we're good to go.
So when we looked at realistically what we could do in fiscal year 24, it's laying that groundwork, right? So that you'll see it reflected, like 4.1 is conduct educational and activities to tobacco retailers in towns who have not been part of a tobacco, I'm going to say who are not part of the Tobacco Control Coalition. And then the activity measure of success will be all tobacco retailers who are not in towns under current tobacco grant get education and materials.
And Jane, if I could add to, so currently the tobacco program, everything's online, just like some of the health departments are online with Permitize. All the tobacco control programs are on an online cloud-based system called Post. We have access to it. The FDA inspectors have access to it. The tobacco control program has given me permission. So say, for example, we send Kate into Sheffield to do baseline education. We can add them to the online cloud system. That's allowed. So we'll actually have a uniform way of conducting educational visits for unfunded towns.
That's great. I didn't, in this post. So then the second thing is, you know, we're gonna educate the retailers, but we also need to educate the towns, right? So that's the towns, that, like Sandusfield, who have never thought about tobacco. That also is, towns that have been participating who may not be following up in a way that the state is needing them to follow up. So we'll just do general education for the towns on the importance of following up and setting the stage so that everyone knows kind of what the next step is. Because, you know, as boards of health, sometimes we're like, okay, there's a problem, now what?
Right.
Yeah. And then the last thing is to facilitate updated tobacco regulations for town who have no current regulations or outdated regulations, and build support from individual boards of health that they are willing to enforce the new regulations.
Another great goal.
Yeah, I got it. But I do appreciate that, Diane. And then we'd like to have updated or new tobacco regulations in at least 2 towns. And that will be our goal for fiscal year 24. Are there any questions? I am gonna add the Post and add towns to the online tobacco education program. I'd like to add that to this section.
Mhm.
Any questions on that? All right, and then the last one is just, and there is some overlap with objective number 2, is just develop our public health nursing program. I think we can all agree that that Jill's done a great job developing that, and we're hoping that with the community health workers that there'll be some additional capacity. So going back to that needs assessment, right? Finding out what towns want. We want to make sure that the needs of our rural populations are met, and then the activity measure of success is identification of at least 2 additional public health nursing programs to meet the needs of the residents. So for instance, I mean, already Jill has a few things in the fire. And I think that is achievable, whether that's facilitating like foot care, that's something that she's been working on. The creation of a fall prevention curriculum, right?
And I know that the EMS, Isaiah, what's his name?
Goey.
Yes, is very interested. They want to do, can't turn my head. They want to do that as well. I spoke with him and would love to collaborate.
Great. Isaiah?
Isaiah Goey, yeah. I think you dealt with him before.
He did come to one of our meetings, and I think he did talk.
Yeah.
And they have a new leader over there that we see at the emergency planning. And I think I gave him until June 1st, until we were gonna start booking them, so.
Good.
So Berkshire Ambulance, and then, you know, the other thing is that Elder Services might have someone who could do it. So it's not necessarily us doing it, but facilitating it and offering it.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to be sure is clear that we will collaborate, you know, at appropriate opportunity.
Yes. So, so in this, and I'm seeing my first big changes possibly. So the activity measure of success for 5.2 is at least 1 public health staff trained at performing the fall. Oh, one of the things that we think is going to be needed that we're not sure that there's any internal capacity, is doing fall risk assessments in people's houses, so like, and especially since we have a homebound program, that's a good opportunity to, and especially if we have a community health worker going with Jill, is for them to like learn how to do a fall risk assessment, make sure that they're getting the food that they need, and so we can identify some isolated individuals through those mechanisms. Fall risk, so the activity measure of success is at least one public health excellent staff trained at performing fall risk assessments and become a matter of balance instructor. I think maybe we could say, I think the fall risk assessments, personally, I think is a good thing for us to have in our wheelhouse. The matter of balance instructor, if there's existing capacity, I think that we could use the existing capacity instead of forming our own necessarily.
Yeah,
So I think
you'll
we need
have
to change that.
Yeah, you'll have to see how that shakes out once you talk with collaborators.
But what if I change that to like, and engaging a matter of balance instructor, or changing that and say, instead of our staff becoming a matter of balance, what, are you guys okay if I work with Jill to figure out how to word that?
Yeah, like a facilitator, you want her to be the facilitator or resource.
Yeah,
I went through each of the Council on Aging's website or their pages to see who's like offering Tai Chi, who's doing that or balance. So I do have that started. I think I just need to reach out to them directly, and also with Monterey, I can't find it. I don't see anything on their webpage, so.
And what's nice, I think, at least for Lennox Community Center, they don't ask what town you're from. If they offer a program, you can walk in the door and you can take it.
Lennox is great.
and then this goes back to language, and then 5.3 is provide language. Oh, Ileana, did you have a question?
Hi, yeah, a question / comment. I need to hop off, but I do want to just say that it's great being here and seeing the thought process that's taken place to do this work plan. And I also appreciate that you're incorporating the CART report. It's very obvious that you're taking into account, and that you're also taking into account your population's needs. So I just want to say that was great to hear. And we are going to be reviewing the work plan when it's submitted internally, but I do think that it's great that you are incorporating the CART, because that was a really main goal that we wanted grantees to know, to take the CART into account when developing this work plan, especially with the additional funding that was given in fiscal year 24. So again, thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me to this meeting. Always happy to attend when I can. So I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ileana, do you see any red flags, like at any point where you're like, or you think we're on the right track?
I personally think, again, we have to do a review of the work plans, but I think you are, because I'm seeing a lot that you are taking into account a lot of the recommendations from the CART, and that was really a goal, that we want people to do that to meet those important requirements. So from what I'm seeing, from what I'm hearing, it seems that you are, but again, we have to do a review of the work plans when they are submitted on the 26th.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
Right. So then provide language appropriate. So this is actually something, there's a few resources available to us. So we have some local capacity to engage. So like engaging, for instance, volunteers in medicine, and see if there's a way to collaborate. Bridge also may be able to, although haven't quite figured that out yet. But then there's also this translation service. It's an interpreter by phone, and you have a PIN, and you only ever use it if you only ever pay if you use it. And so if you come up with someone who has all sorts of languages, you can get translation assistance.
I think I mentioned this last time, that there's that public health state group of students,
Oh, yes,
right, because they were offering translation services for documents and things of that sort. Do they still exist? And
they do.
we should tap into that.
So we've been using Fairview to document it. I will say, the one thing with working with interns is it would be great if you needed a 2 or 3 week turnaround. So if something's immediate, that is not an appropriate place.
Right. Right.
And that's where I think utilizing our existing local partners. Now, that being said, if we know we're gonna have vaccination clinics, and we pretty much know what it's gonna say, right? So there's a situation that we could use the interns to engage them, and maybe even in a different way, they could help design the poster and then translate it, and maybe.
Right, and I'm also thinking, as we look at this piece by piece over time, that there may be other opportunities that they can help us with documentation, with forms and layout of forms or something. I mean, I think I'm really happy to hear Jim say once Permadize comes in, a lot of this will fall into place, but there may be other things like the problem or the complaint reporting, to having them take multiple things and put them into a standard one that we might be able to work with. I don't know, but they keep offering that service, and it would be good if it would be beneficial for us to use.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So that's what I've got. Obviously there's some typos and but conceptually, that's what we'd like to propose to you guys, and we wanted to find out whether or not it aligns with what you think your towns might need.
I can't imagine that we can't fit the needs of each of our towns into this framework. In the various parts of it. Some, as you said before, won't be relevant to some, but some will be critical to some towns. And to me, it will all fit in here.
That's the give and take.
Right. Do you need a motion to approve the concepts, this as a concept, or?
Sure. I mean, the work plans due that we won't meet again before the work plans due. But I think if the collaborative is okay with the high level 4 objectives, I think, sure. Why don't we put a motion, without obviously contingent upon final edits and submittal. If Madam Chair, if you want to put a motion on just to get the green light for Jane and I to keep moving along, that'd be great.
Yeah, I would like to move that we approve the plan as presented with some minor editorial corrections for moving to the next stage of developing the budget and submitting the plan and developing the budget.
So, so the concept of the plan with the 5 objectives.
Correct, and the activity, right.
All right, is there a second?
Second. Okay, any further comments about it?
I've done a wonderful job.
Right, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Good. Any negative votes? No, thank you. Okay. There are a few things left on our agenda and we're really running sort of late.
I was supposed to remind you to do something.
Right, I've got a note on mine as well, under member updates. I think we understand the priorities and goals and next steps, which is on the agenda for 2023. Is that something?
Oh, just that they exist and I just wanted to keep it on the agenda, that's all.
Okay, okay. Member updates. All right, I have one, which is there was an incident at the What is it called? I
It's in the
didn't,
Berkshire Public, the Mount Everett School.
Mount Everett. Okay, I didn't have any children in the school system and I am totally in the dark about it. But Beth Brook-Bluto, and I have been speaking because there was an incident of lack of water pressure, which they had to eventually shut the school down for a while, send the kids home, but she did not inform the Board of Health about this. So I communicated with her and she would like to revitalize and reinstitute the advisory group that had been meeting with her during COVID. It's really only relevant for those towns who have children in that school. But if someone from the Board of Health of those representative towns would like to join in a quarterly meeting with Beth, I think that could be very beneficial. So those towns, but who would they be, Jane?
Sheffield, New Marlboro,
Mount
Egremont,
Washington,
Mount Washington.
Monterey.
Or Monterey.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, like conceptually, I think the most important thing is that they're reporting to the Board of Health in Sheffield. Okay, so I wouldn't want that to exclude that. And the other issue that happened during COVID is that they were throwing us under the bus early and often.
Well, that's
So,
why I'd like to
Mhm.
get established a
Yeah.
working relationship.
yeah, so I think the relationship's really important, as long as it is a relationship and not
Right.
just a tool for them.
Right, no, absolutely, and I already suspect that they have a grant coming up from the state in June, and I'm thinking they somehow want us to do more work on this than we're interested in doing, but nonetheless, if we can get some volunteers, I'm certainly wanting to meet with her. Is there anyone else from any of these towns that would like to join me at a periodic meeting?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair, if we can figure out a coordination approach, I'd be more than happy to participate.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anyone else? We can put this out to
Mhm.
people who are not here.
I will do that as a follow-up.
Okay, thank you, Jane. All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your listening to me on that.
And Pat, I do have one quick update, household hazardous waste collection event, May
Right.
20th, 9 AM, Lee wastewater treatment plant. It does require pre-registration. It's pretty full, but I think we pretty much cover all South County for the household hazardous collection.
Right, great. Thank you for that reminder.
I did want to tell you that Ivy, which is our emergency co-responder, has gone out to some of the police departments and offered them protection kits, as well as information on where the sharps disposal is in each communities. At some point, the communities that don't have a sharps container or kiosk, I think that would be a goal of like trying to find out if towns would, additional towns would like something at their transfer station, for instance, to get rid of the sharps. And we have some education activities that will come up in fiscal year 24. But so back to Ivy, there are these little kits and they've got like Narcan, fentanyl test strips. And then we've toyed around, and then these like little individual, needle sharps containers to just have it in the cruisers, and just trying to make sure that we're keeping our first responders safe because they're really important to us.
Mhm.
And they're kind of being branded as more of a officer protection kit because again, we need to keep them healthy.
Great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? From the members, we have no citizens. Well, we've heard from two citizens, Mike and Ileana. Okay, the upcoming trainings are listed here. I think we can all look at those. And our next meeting is on June 9th, both in person and remote. I hope we will have more in person and personal, and I hope my neck will allow me to actually move. Anything else?
It looks like Mike has a question.
I just have a comment more. The MAHB training that we're doing right now, we did one last week in Marlboro and last month in Taunton, and there's a lot of new stuff that's coming down the pike. And I think that if you could promote this with your Board of Health members, we've had usually it's staff that shows up because the boards never seem to learn about it from the staff. But the last two that we've done this year so far, huge amounts of board members, and they seem to, when you look at the reviews pretty much almost all say, oh my God, I didn't realize that was up to us. There's so many things. There's been a drastic rewriting of public speak that you all need to know about. Somebody can stand in front of you and can say anything that they want about you or to you under the newest decision from the SJC. And everybody needs to know that, because if you shut them down, you're going to get sued. And I mean, they can say anything. The SJC basically said anything short of insurrection speech or immediate threat of physical harm to a board member is fair game to be spoken in public speak. You need to know that. A lot happening. Please promote it with your board members. It's going to be at the place that begins with a D in Holyoke. The Delaney House, which is where we did it last year. I also want to put on your radar the fact that there is currently new legislation being proposed having to do with the statewide well regulation. And one of the proponents of that is your own Smitty Pignatelli, who I had the pleasure of meeting yesterday and testifying in front of. My testimony that I gave on behalf of the boards of health was that instead of 351 separate well standards, we do need one well standard across the state. But the smaller and less financially able the town is, the more wells they have. It's just axiomatic. And that if they're going to be throwing something at the small towns, which is where this is all going, it's coming to you guys and to the Cape and Islands. If they're throwing things at small towns that don't have adequate resources to begin with, don't look to the public health excellence funding, because every penny of that's been allocated. That's not your pocketbook to draw from. Basically, I didn't use those words, but that's the intent of my testimony, that you've got to put in independent funding. And so when you run into Smitty at the grocery store and he says, oh, we had this hearing and this guy from MAHB, I want you all to be forewarned, because there were only three, there were two state reps, Senna and Pignatelli, and the state senator that's pushing it is it's Jamie Eldridge. I'm sorry, I don't know how I could ever forget Jamie's name. And so they were the only ones testifying at the testimony yesterday. But if you do run into him, make sure that you reinforce the fact that it's a great idea. It's vital. The time is right, but don't do it unless they're going to fund it, because you guys, it'll bankrupt your towns. It really will. And my real concern also was the senior citizen living on a fixed income who's barely making ends meet. The last thing they need to do now is to pay for well remediation in their wells. So there's going to be funding for that too. I'll be happy to send my testimony to all of you if you want to see it. I'll just attach it to the existing list of names that you guys distribute to.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing, Mike,
Okay.
because I think the more education we have, the better we are at addressing it. And I'll see you on June 3rd at the training.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
There's another board member from Sheffield who may be going as well. Good.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, we need a motion to adjourn, unless there are other comments. No? I will move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded to adjourn, and I won't entertain any negative votes.
Tyranny.
Yeah, right.
Thank you all.